Good late afternoon because it is a work session and we're going to be discussing our strategic plan this evening. So thank you if you gave up your time to come this evening. We really appreciate it. I'm sure everyone will bring their own unique perspective on this, so thank you for attending. We are going to start by just backing up and reviewing where we've been and where we're going, so those in the audience will have an opportunity to actually see where we're at right now. So if you look over here, we actually started, well, this is actually the road map over here that says the Manchester Readiness Map. And it is the roadmap of how we have actually, the process that we're taking and what we have been doing. And we started out with belief statements. The board sat down with me and Dr. Adamson from Indiana School Board Association, and we came up with belief statements. And then we took those belief statements, and then we invited the cabinet in, and then we just started discussing what is our mission? What is our mission for the corporation? And that means, why do we do what we do? And our mission ended up turning out, and if you want any sheets or extra copies, they are all on the second row over there of the podium as you came in. But we looked at our mission statement and came up with dream, grow, achieve together. Because we want our students to be dreaming about their possibilities. We want them to grow while they're with us, and then we want them to continuously achieve to get better, and we're all going to do that together. Then we went into the vision statement, and that is the what we do. And Manchester Community Schools provides diverse opportunities for all students in a safe and creative learning environment. So we may not necessarily have all that together right now, but that's why we're here, is to make sure that we have that. And we are going to be discussing that down the road. And then we took those belief statements that we had and we created commitment statements. And what are we committed to? I'm not going to read through all of those because they are available over there for you. But we decided what we are committed to in the administration and the school board, and how we're going to back teachers and what we're going to do to make sure we get the job done. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and move forward. In tonight's meeting, I provided some norms up here, meeting norms, and we just ask that you have a willingness to listen to others, respects the thoughts of others, think outside the box, because that's what we're asking you to do. Keep conversations professional. Stay on task, and limit sidebar conversations, mainly so we can all hear what everybody has to say. So let's go ahead and kick this off with a video. And I believe, Jeremy, you have that video ready, and I'll sit down so you can see that. Okay, so hopefully you got out of that our students are doing great things, and we want to make sure that continues. So we're going to start with, as you can see, we had attributes listed that they popped up, attribute number 1, attribute number 2, and so on and so forth. So what we are going to do is start, and we're going to do backwards planning, and we are going to start with the end in mind. We're going to start with what we want our graduates to have when they end their time with us. So what kind of attributes do we want them to have when they walk out of our doors? So we're going to we've actually created a list just to get our mind going. And we're not saying that these are the only ones. We're actually going to brainstorm some additional ones. Do you have it?
Yeah, I did you want this?
Yes. Sue's in the process of passing those out. Would you pass those out? Yes. Yes, we are including the audience. You see that? Okay, what we are going to do is just want you to think through. These are just a list we came up with to just kind of start the conversation. But I know there's probably more that we could come up with. So I want you to really think about what do we want our kids to end up with? And we want big picture items. We want big picture. We don't want something small like CTE courses or something along those lines. That's what popped into my head. So we want big picture ideas. And what are we missing? So I want to just really quick brainstorm with the cabinet and the board right now. And if there's anything that you feel like we're missing, we will add it up there. So any thoughts? Sure, just get your mic in, because we are recording it.
How about lead?
Lead or leadership, either one.
Leadership, yeah.
It's a good one.
Maybe something purposeful or purpose-driven or something like that.
Did you get that, Sue? Anything else?
Happy?
Happy? Happy? If the cabinet and the board doesn't have any other ideas, I will go out into the audience. You good with that? Maybe something will, oh, there you go.
Perseverance?
I think that's on there. Yes. Does anybody in our audience today have a word that we're not thinking of that's not on that list?
How about the word team?
Team?
Work in teams?
Collaborate is on there. And we have work in teams. Is that the same of what you're thinking?
Yeah, that'll work.
You just like the one word, right? Anything else? Golly gee, we did that good of a job? Oh, wow. Please let us know if you think of anything else. Okay, we're going to conduct a Mentimeter, and I am going to let Sue explain this process, and we're going to do this with the board and the cabinet first, and we're going to see what kind of attributes they come up with, and I'll let her explain that process.
So you have a small sheet of paper at your desk. If you could just grab that so you can see it. Mentimeter is nothing more than a word cloud creator. So what we're going to ask you to do is go to the web address listed there, menti.com, and enter that code. When you do that, you're going to be able to enter 5 different responses. So using the attribute sheet that we just created, what we would like for you to do, and you can take a minute and maybe prioritize these before you even get into Mentimeter, but enter your top 5 choices. So when you think of a graduate of Manchester Community Schools, what they will be or be able to do, what are your top 5? Now, the catch to doing this correctly is you need to type the words or phrases in just like they're written on the sheet, or if we added them like they were added up there on the sheet or on the board. And also, don't hit return in between words because that submits your entry. So just click to the next box. Does that make sense? So find your 5 that you think are the highest of priority. Everyone will enter those. It's anonymous. And the word cloud will be created. The response that is entered the most will be the largest and the brightest.
Does case matter? Capitalization matter?
I would try and type it just like it says here. That would be helpful.
Copy paste. See that with my eyes, told me to get it. We're going civilian. I can get it.
We will give you time to process all those words, so don't rush. Because I really had to stop and think about it. Are you doing well? I should be.
Where's soft skills, guys? I don't see a picture and then soft skills. Would that be under? Skills. Oh, I see it, skills. All right. Can we add soft skills to the list? Is it too late?
There is a request to add soft skills to the list.
I'm sorry, yeah, if it's too late, I get it.
I could do it.
Motion on this.
Can you define?
Has anybody started? You probably aren't finished yet, though, are you? Okay.
Definition. Really? I'm just, I didn't know if you were yanking my.
Attendance.
Showing up on time. Again.
Being responsible.
Take direction.
Coachable.
In other words, staying off your device, if you're, don't want to be on your staying off your device. Those are the things I think, that's what I hear from our employers, so.
Soft skills different than resilience and
Well, that's
imaginative.
what I wanted, I mean,
Imagine
Could fit under those categories.
moral.
But the things you said, like be on time, that's different.
if you're asking, like, I guess I don't see that as a category currently of soft skills, but again, this ship is passed, so if it's too late to add, I totally understand that.
I added it up there.
Okay.
I would think a lot of these we could argue are umbrella terms that we could also put lots of things under. That would,
And actually, that is the next step in the process, so just be thinking that these are big picture items.
Oh, yeah, I get where you're at.
Is there a term on
That's
here
the one
that
in there that would be like that, right? Yeah.
would be like marketable, like,
I don't even have a paper.
Future
so
ready.
they're like, future, yeah.
maybe future ready or compete
Job ready
even.
or college
I think that's what future ready is.
I think future ready would encompass that.
Or even world-class knowledge and skills, kind of.
I thought about that coming in, like flexible. Learn that career's gonna change, I don't know
It's harder to do than what you realize till you start doing it. It's like, what do we want them to be?
21st century, like education, they go, show and grit, that's the, those two guns. So you pick one, show and grit, yeah. Better get in here. All right, I'm getting in. Sorry.
We have one that's evidently too long, it won't take it in the box.
Really?
Yeah.
World-class knowledge, yeah, you can just put in world-class knowledge and it'll go through. And leave out the rest.
Okay.
You pick five, you just pick yours. Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Just know that later on too, if we like the word create and we decide to tweak the word to creative, we can do that. Just know that we can use any form of those words that are on there. If you like the idea.
It's a minute. I know. It will probably. Get there, we'll wait till everyone's, the big review.
You guys are doing it right there, aren't you, Tony? You're doing it? You're done? Tommy, you're done? You're done? You're done? How many of you are done? 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 Dave, are you done? Are you done? Okay, super. Looks like we're ready. Yes, we are finished. Let's see what comes up.
Did we just, guys, did we just go through this entire thing to get to here? Is that what I said?
Well, and I can do the spreadsheet of this too. So our biggest one, solve problems, communicate. It looks like lifelong learner and collaborate are the same size. And then we've got, I'll go in and look at the spreadsheet. I can get the exact numbers for those because a couple of those look like they're about the same size. But there are 4 that definitely stand out as the largest ones. Do you agree with me there, or are my eyes just not reading that right? I see 4 that are larger than the others. Is that right with your eyes as well? Solve problems, communicate, lifelong learner, and collaborate. It looks like think critically and contribute are the next 2. But I can confirm that when I go into the spreadsheet part of that.
So we have those 4, collaborate, solve problems, communicate, and lifelong learner. What did we say was next? Think critically.
Contribute and think critically are the next 2.
Contribute. Okay, let's just have a discussion about that. Would you agree as a team that solve problems should be on there? Obviously, most of you put it on there, so probably. So that one we feel like is solid, right? Okay, collaboration, that's important. And that's what we want our graduates to do when they go up, leave us, is make sure that they can collaborate.
Well, that's pretty tight with teamwork, right?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty much the same thing.
When is that?
Yeah. And lifelong learner, you want them to walk out of here and always be a learner and being willing to learn, correct? You're good there?
We're expecting 17, 18-year-olds to be lifelong learners.
that's my concern there, a little bit.
I mean, they have no clue what lifelong learning is about at age 17, 18, in my opinion.
And I guess I should back up a little bit. We need to be able to do things in our schools to get them to that point. And we will be creating, I guess you want to say, action items in each grade level on how we are going to get those outcomes or those attributes to be where we actually would like them to be. So-
I like the idea of being a learner. I think lifelong, you almost have to be, how about something like, engaged in learning, or, I don't know, I don't like lifelong.
Is it because, I mean, are you hesitating because they haven't lived a life yet? Or,
Yeah, and they haven't even seen life yet.
because I mean, to me, the way I read it was more that they're the kind of people that at least know that they're going to be learning, or have that in mind, that I need to keep learning throughout life.
That they're,
Not that
yeah,
they've
that
done
they
it.
have the love of learning. How about something?
How do we measure something like that and make sure that they get to that point? Because we have to keep that in mind.
Well, it starts with home, with letting them know that, you know, high school is just the beginning of probably what they're gonna learn. And I think that also probably ties to our weakness with alumni, where we don't, you know, how many alumni come into this school system and kind of, tell the story of where, where they started out in Manchester and the road they took, kind of setting that example. So with my kids, I think it's very important to understand, high school, a lot of them go out when I graduate, but when you get a job, you learn. So, learning, to me, it has been kind of a lifelong journey, or it will be. And if the time that they stop is when they're gonna become stagnant in life, basically. But I know what you're saying too, is kind
I
of.
think you're asking a good question. How do you measure someone?
Yeah, because our teachers are gonna be charged with creating ways in order to be able to get them to these end points. And I don't want to speak for teachers, but can you think of ways that you as teachers, for what you're doing right now in your subject area, that you could actually measure whether we have achieved that attribute or that outcome? I don't know, I'm just asking.
I think you can measure if kids are curious. Curiosity is a sign of a lifelong learner, but I don't know how you'd actually measure whether someone's going to be a lifelong learner.
No, I think the state struggles with that, right? As they look at some of these metrics they want to judge schools by, like it's secondary education or jobs after that. I think it's a struggle for anyone, but.
Anybody have any thoughts out there?
I think we do have, we want the kids to be, like in 5 years, I don't know what the kids are gonna need to know, because those jobs aren't created yet. So I value the lifelong learning. And I'm going to put that, I don't know how to measure that. I have no idea. And so when I think about what it is what kind of traits I want to see the kids have, like when they exit the building, so that they're able to adjust for those jobs, problem solving is certainly going to be, they're going to have to figure stuff out. And that's a big trait in lifelong learning. So if we didn't have it, I feel good about that. I feel good about, that I don't see anything wrong with a lot of the things we put in here. Some of them didn't come out as number 3 or 4, but perseverance and integrity, those things we kind of try to instill in our kids anyway, and we'll continue. Even though they're not up there, we just do, that's what we do. So as far as lifelong learner, I have no idea how to measure that. I get what it is though, and I want the kids to be flexible and able to adjust as the world changes, because it's changing all the time.
The question I would have, does lifelong learner, like you said, fit under problem solving or solving problems?
Not to me.
Not to you?
Solving problems is a portable skill set that would go with lifelong learning, though.
Well, that's what I was just thinking, that as a lifelong learner, wouldn't you always want to learn to collaborate with people, solve problems, communicate, think critically. I don't know, I was just thinking of it under those other umbrellas. Maybe I'm thinking wrong, but we have a hand in the audience. Only reason I'm coming to you is because we're recording, so.
If someone graduates and you can identify them as a learner, as someone who has that attribute of being a learner, then more than likely, when they leave high school, they're going to continue to be a learner. And so it would seem to me like that just the simple word learner, as opposed to lifelong, would cover the waterfront.
Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, I'm sorry, Rich.
Yeah, I think the lifelong learner is kind of tricky. It's because, in school you have a certain context, and like being able to have like, okay, you have like 9 weeks, 9-week quarters. Okay, this is your, test grade. This is, your grade at the end of the class. And, lifelong learner, I think to me means, you're able to, when you don't have a grade for a class necessarily, when you're outside of that context, can you, manage to research things and find out different things, in different contexts. It's kind of a willingness to step outside of the box. I think, you can think critically and you can solve problems, within, kind of a certain box, but I think it's kind of like expanding beyond that. The tricky thing is, when you're within that context, trying to measure or, figure out how to get students to do that later on in life. And, I really think it does get hairy with, when you start talking about being responsible for, students doing 5-10 years down the line, because all kinds of different courses, paths happen during that time, that can get students, off track that you can't necessarily prepare them for or are responsible for. Yeah.
Thank you. And really what just kind of resonated with me is teaching our students to always be learning by teaching them how to find what they want, with the information they want. So I think, I actually like it, but it was difficult for me to get in my brain how we would measure that. So are you wanting to move forward with learner?
I guess, are we just talking about those 4, or?
We're talking about the 4 right now, because they were the 4 dominant ones, and whether you wanted to keep them.
I'm just, before I can think about that, I'm really struggling that literate isn't one of the 4. Like, we want illiterate graduates, or, I'm sorry, before I can think about those 4, I just have to, if we could, or we can table that, or you can say, Ruth, we can have more than 4, and then that can free my brain, but the fact that literate isn't up there
And
is a
that's my
concern to
fault.
me.
We're looking for 5 to 7, preferably 5. So we're not there yet. We just looked to see what would be our dominant ones as they popped up with the group.
All right, well, can I plug literate? Everybody at the table, please.
You can plug anything you would like.
Then to answer your question, learner is fine with me.
And me also.
I would still support lifelong learner. I think that's more descriptive, and I think if we're creating a passion for learning that will stay with them for their life, that is a very positive goal for a school system. It's a passion for discovery, excitement, and although as a teacher there may not be a lot of excitement in a 10th grade chemistry class, but irrefutable, yeah, exactly, something that excites them to discover, even though you're planting a seed, even though it may not appear like it's going to grow, they'll reflect back on it with excitement.
I'm sorry. My challenge with lifelong is we've just spent 20 minutes defining what it is, and now we're gonna say this is one of our main things. And so is there something more simple than, saying a passion for learning or a love of learning that is maybe that we don't have to spend 20 minutes to telling kids or describing what it is?
Yeah. I like passion for learning, or love of, yeah.
I think it's got meaning. So I think one of the problems is you're struggling. Some of these things up here, the way I look at this is some of them are symptoms, some are root cause. Some of them are drivers, some are the effect we want out of the students. So we're going to be able to measure the drivers, and the effect is kind of what we want them to do if you have a scale. So you take Notre Dame University, so very tight alumni, so they know when people graduate what they do, right? At a high school level, we don't track stuff like that. To me, that would be your measurement is past tense. When they do leave school, what do we do? And I think that's the same struggle that the state has. So I think it is measurable. We just don't have a baseline. We don't have a measurement for it. But I don't know. I kind of like the word or something in front of learner that says kind of to Rick's point that and an example would be just that. When my kids come home excited about something, who was it, Jabin or something? I think they blew up a pumpkin or something, right? Well, and that's good, because those kids remember that. And to me, that's what life learning means. It's memorable experiences that they're going to use that's going to push them forward. They're going to run into other challenges in life. And you got to teach them. You got to teach a kid how to learn, right, before they learn. And that sometimes with my kids would be, okay, they come hunting questions, right? And that's the first time. So I set them down. Each one of them, we went through this. I think it's probably 4th grade. And I said, what chapter are you in? And they said, oh, chapter 4. So I set them down and put my finger on that first word in the text, right? And then I had them follow my finger and read that whole chapter. Not one of them's ever came back to me, and it's not to be mean to them. It's like it's got to be them that learn. So to me, that's got a lot of meaning to it. That means we're doing something to change the form, fit, function of these kids, that they're going to take those challenges on. They're not thinking that, when they cross that stage at high school, they're done learning like a lot of them do. Then they go into a job and they go, oh crap, I never learned, I went to college for 9 years. I never learned what I was going to do in a job. Never once, right? I always learned on the job. So I think, to me, it's got some kind of special meaning, whether you want to put a different word than lifelong, but there's got to be some adjective to it that just, learner to me just doesn't cut it. It's just too flat to me. There's got to be another word that describes what we're trying to do with them.
So many thoughts?
I'm gonna ask a question. What about if we put create lifelong learners at the top? Because if we do all of those other things that are listed up there, that's what we're doing. Maybe we just got that one in the wrong place. That
So
would be our
you're
goal,
having
to create,
it
our
be
goal.
the umbrella over all of the others underneath?
Mhm.
Kind of the net effect.
I mean, if we teach them to contribute, to collaborate, solve problems, communicate, think critically, and be purpose-driven and imaginative, we just created lifelong learners. I don't know, maybe that just needs to be a banner at the top. It's a question.
Oh, I don't know, what does everybody else think?
That feels to me like it's like the vision. So, which provides diverse opportunities for all students in a safe and creative learning environment. So I guess I'm open to it, but I'm wondering how that's different than the vision. Because do you see what I'm asking?
Yes. What does everybody else think?
I guess for me, when you look at everything up on the board the way it is, you know, it's obviously very busy. But, you know, as we start to delineate and we can kind of compartmentalize some things that are up there to see which ones of these kind of fit within some other of these larger ones. For instance, you know, in my 5, I put contribute, but I can see how contribute could be, you know, pushed into, you know, the broader category of solving problems. You know, thinking critically could be pushed into the broader category of solving problems. So, you know, to clean this up a little bit, for me, as I look at this board, you know, I'm trying to piece together, okay, these are all important things that obviously were valuable to us as a group, but how can we kind of start to kind of piece things together to, you know, come up with, you know, in my opinion, less is more. So if we can find 5 things that we can guarantee that our graduates are going to do once they graduate from Manchester Community Schools, I think there's power in that. You know, the more broad you get, in my opinion, you know, in some instances it really starts to lose the meaning. So, you know, that's kind of where I'm at right now, is trying to piece together what fits where, so we can really get to a core group of things that are going to be, you know, agreeable to all of us as a team here.
Kind of along that same line, I'm looking at those 4 big ones, and to me, collaborate and communicate are real similar. I don't know if you guys feel the same way on that or not, but they're not exactly the same, but pretty close to me.
They are pretty close, but to me they take on kind of a different meaning. Collaboration, in my opinion, is more working with different groups of people, you know, on various projects you may have. Communication is, quite frankly, it's the ability to speak and orate. And so, you know, what I look at is, okay, my, you know, I don't have first graders, 4th graders, you know, am I giving my 4th graders opportunities to, you know, present something publicly, whether it be to their classes, to the school as a whole, and that may be something that they're working on individually, but then in other facets, they are, you know, working collaboratively with peers, you know, to, you know, do something else. And I think that they're both very important, but I think that keeping them separate allows us to focus on each of them, because you could have a student that, you know, collaborates very well, but maybe is not necessarily a great communicator in some other ways, and vice versa.
I see them as two very different things. And I think communicate isn't just oral, like you can communicate with body language, written, speaking, but, you know, somebody can communicate all day long, but maybe not necessarily collaborate, which to me is a team player. So I would like to see them separate, and I do think they're both important.
There's I don't know if you know the Kano model or not, right? So there's 3 classifications, kind of your grouping thing. There's kind of must-be's, attributes that we look at, and so like literacy, that's like, if we're not doing that, we're kind of failing in school, right? There's more is better.
It's an opinion, but.
You know, levels of problem solving, different things like that, and then there's delighters. They kind of look at those 3 categories. You know, the must-be's, more is better, and then kind of delighters. And my mind always kind of floats up here that, you know, you coming in with that literate thing, I don't know if there's you know, there's an opportunity to kind of think about these things like that, because in my mind, I'm looking at these and I'm going, okay, there's a lot of terms here, but what's actionable? Or what's, you know, and measurable, kind of in the same hand, so I don't know. There's kind of a lot there, I guess, is what I'm saying.
There is, and it's a tough process to do this, but we need to narrow the focus.
And we're looking at it from that same lens. You know, we have to, from kindergarten all the way up through seniors in high school, you know, we're going to develop how we are going to measure and assess whether our students are able to demonstrate these skills once we establish what the skills are. So, you know, again, you know, for my staff at the intermediate school, how do we assess whether our students can collaborate, you know, well enough to be able to ascend to the next grade level? You know, how can I assess whether my sixth graders are able to solve problems to the extent that, okay, they're ready to go to the junior, senior high school and build upon that. So, you know, that's the lens through which we're kind of viewing it already is, okay, you know, these key words and key terms that we're looking at, how can I, you know, sell this and relate this to my teaching staff in a way that, you know, they say, oh, you know, we already kind of do these things and do these activities and opportunities, or what things are we going to need to establish now that we've decided that these are our, you know, non-negotiables for our students going forward.
I'm sorry.
So it seems to me, what I'm hearing is we have 4, and then literate.
That would be 5, yes. I'm looking at number 5 was, tied for 5 was think critically, contribute, and literate. Is think critically the same thing as solve problems?
Can be.
So maybe we look at, we drop down, we'll come back to the other one. So do you want think critically or solve problems? If it's,
I prefer solve problems because I think it's broader.
I do as well.
are you good with that? Is getting rid of think critically?
As long as we
Okay.
don't solve problems.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Hey, we're getting somewhere now. Do you agree that communicate is important?
And that one was actually the highest because we had one communication. So when I added those together, that one should have been a tinge larger than the other. We had 8 votes for communicate, if I count communication in there. And that was the highest number.
So we have a solid solve problems, collaborate, communicate.
And then contribute and lifelong learner were tied with 5 votes apiece.
And we have our plug for literate.
Does literate seem more specific than the others? Or do-
Literate
like
is
how-
you can read and write. So
Yeah, easily measurable.
Doesn't
Or no.
fall-
I don't know that
Help
it's
me out.
always easily measured. I mean, I've known a lot of high school kids that it's hard to know. Known a lot of adults that's hard to know whether they're literate or not, but.
And that's why we put that definition on the page as well, because when you say literate, you think read and write, but I think we're truly hoping that our graduates can read, write, and discuss in depth. That would be our definition of literate, or we could agree on a definition maybe of literate if that's not what we align to.
Yeah, I think as long as if communicate were there, then I understand. But to me, communicate is that discuss in depth is a piece of that too.
True.
I think there's a lot between communicate and literate that can kind of overlap there.
It's a whole lot easier to solve problems if you're literate. I think. Or you have different resources to solve problems than if you're illiterate.
Can you be literate, sorry for my ignorance, can you be literate in science?
In science?
And nothing else?
No, can you be literate in the English language? Can you be literate in math? Can you be literate in, I'm just asking.
I mean, well,
Is it-
according to this definition, we could be.
I'm trying to build support for, I'm just, a broad ability.
Well, I think the support, Rick, is saying like, if we're not creating literate graduates, we're creating illiterate graduates, and are you supporting of that?
No, it's my own ignorance on.
I'm just teasing.
Right.
I appreciate your questions. Yeah, I do think, which is why like the discussion about vocabulary becomes so important in those content areas, because
Right.
you could be literate, but in science face a textbook and have no idea what's happening, or have no understanding because of that piece of it. So they're great questions, and I really was just teasing a
Yeah,
little bit.
that's all right, I'm good with that.
So, okay, Tommy, looks like you're getting ready to say something. Go ahead.
I just think. I get, to me, it's like, in my mind, what's assumed versus what needs to be explicitly stated. You know, do we need to state explicitly that our students are going to be literate when, you know, the whole task of a school is to create people that are literate? In my mind, for me, you know, these are things that our graduates are going to possess, you know, in addition to, for lack of a better term, like, you know, these broader pillars. I mean, the state mandates that every one of our students be literate, but then we have these additional pieces that, you know, MCS students are going to be, they're going to have 12 years of, you know, experience with communication and problem solving and collaboration, you know, in addition to these basic literacy skills. So I guess for me, you know, when we curated this list initially, that didn't come up because that wasn't where our minds were necessarily going at the time.
I hear what you're saying, Tommy, but I think it could be argued that our standards expect collaboration, communication, and solving problems as well. And
That's fair.
like when we talk about a profile of a graduate, a literate person is at the top, because that is what schools are producing. And I understand, and at the same time, I think our standards ask us to do those things too.
That would give you what? That would give you 6, right?
Are we at 5? Is that what you said? Solve problems, collaborate, communicate?
Yeah, number 1 was communicate. Number 2 was solve problems. Number 3 was collaborate. Number 5 was tied with lifelong learner and contribute. And then you added literate, which would get us 6.
I kind of agree with, I don't want to put any kid out there that's illiterate. I don't, but that's an assumption I make when no one's around a table is saying we should have kids without diplomas. I think we all assume that they should walk out with a diploma too. And I think there are some assumptions. Certainly I go in assuming that literate is one of those things. I don't, and I see, you know, I'm just looking at some of the colleges and looking at some of the high school that put this together. I don't see literate as one of those things. Certainly I don't disagree that that we want kids that are literate. I mean, that's an assumption I'm making, that our kids can read and write. We're gonna get that whether it's up there or not. That's a huge
So it's
part
kind of a
what we do.
must be, right? That's how you're seeing it, and then some of us are gonna shift up to the lighter, so that's the quandary you're in right now, is we're looking from different perspectives, and you know, I don't know that they are as literate as they need to be honest with you. I mean, yeah, there's all kinds of grading to that, but I think that's where, I mean, I feel like we're stuck a little bit, and that's where we're stuck, is you guys are saying this is a must be, and you're, like, I'm like you, I'm looking at the lighters, like, how do we differentiate? So, you know, when looking at this, what don't we see in the students we create today that we need to focus on? I mean, that's kind of where my mind is right now, is okay, proof's in the pudding, so where are we failing? And that's where purpose comes to me. A lot of kids out there, they don't understand they even have a purpose in life. They're trying to find that. So like on some of these things, I'm really struggling with, like, contribute. I mean, I can see us doing service things, and I mean, I could see where we can get actions behind that and measure that as far as, you know, service programs and stuff like that. But so maybe go with 6 then, and leave literate on there, and we're going to further define these things, right, at some point.
I think what Rick was getting at, though, is literate could be more broad than just reading or writing. I mean, it's almost literacy in the core 40 or whatever, you know, of the different science, math, English, history, just the core basic literacy but not just reading and writing.
Well, it means they could consume knowledge from different media. Basically, you know, take their mind through that knowledge. To me, it means they can, at the end, they can debate their You know, at the end, literacy, you're consuming knowledge to do something, right? You're gonna process it and debate your way or something like that, right? I mean, they're gonna do something with that knowledge. That's what kind of literacy means. It also means they can process the knowledge that they read. Because how do they, if they read it, then if you're asking them to write something, they gotta process it first. So I think it is a broad term, you know? I think it should, can we have 6 instead of 5 is what I'm saying.
Yeah, we were shooting for 5 to 7.
Okay.
I'm
Closer
sorry,
to 5.
I need you to say the 6 again. I'm really sorry.
Communicate, solve problems, collaborate. Right now we have it as lifelong learner, contribute, and then we added literate. I think that I just named 6.
And Jeremy had a suggestion back there without a microphone, right? He said literate learners.
Combine those two.
Do you want to expand upon that? No, okay.
It's nice alliteration. Tommy, didn't you put contribute in with something else?
I did. I was just going to make that comment that I can envision contribute going under the problem-solving umbrella. I'm big, like service learning, I think that's a huge thing, but service learning can be a byproduct of trying to solve a problem that you see in your community. So I think that fits well under solving problems, and I would be in favor of that to be able to go from 6 to 5.
I hear what you're saying. I guess I'm thinking of solving problem in a completely different way than what you just stated there. I meant, like, to me, it means more thinking critically.
Why couldn't it be all of those?
I don't know. I mean, can it? I mean,
Well,
they're
here's the
different
thing.
things to me, so.
Like, you know, and again, if we're doing this across a scope of 12 grade levels, you know, maybe in a couple different grades you're doing service learning projects, which is contributing in that way. And in different grade levels, you know, you're assessing thinking critically by, you know, solving some other kind of a problem. So there's going to be a large swath of, you know, opportunities that students have to be able to demonstrate their problem solving skills while showing that they can contribute and showing that they can think critically. Along those lines, I guess.
Just let me say, there was a group of 12 of us that just went on a school visit in Eminence, Kentucky, to a school that just has reinvented themselves. Is there anybody here that would like to speak on what we're discussing right now? Well, these guys went too. Because I want you to hear about the problem solving and some of the things that they did, so you can get an idea of how that would connect, like he just said.
Being in Eminence, which was a great experience, by the way, so thank you for making that happen. It was really great to see even kindergartners sitting around the table, being able to collaborate and talk and problem solve. And then they were given, what I loved about this school is that they were given the opportunity to dream, and they were given the yes. They were given the yes from their administrators and their teachers, and the time and the ability to think outside of the box. I mean, they were problem solving from K all the way through 12th grade. Specific problems, nothing pops into mind exactly some of the things they were.
Oh my God.
Oh, the fire hydrants, yeah, thank you. Somehow they figured out that the fire hydrants in the town were misfiring. They weren't able to do their job, and so they went around and they painted, they researched, they talked with community leaders, and they created a service project to paint these fire hydrants all over the entire town so that the volunteer firemen were able to connect to the hoses to the right fire hydrants in order to get the most water, the
Pressure.
yeah, to the flow. They also in their town, and I'm not sure which grade level, but there was a segregated graveyard. And to get into the African American portion of the graveyard, there wasn't even a road. over there. But to the white side, there was a road and it was paved. And so they were able to, I mean, they pulled together a team of people and resources and had the blessing from their administrators and board to say, hey, let's build a road. And so people, when they come into this graveyard, they're able to gain access to both sides equally. I mean, they just off the charts, K through 12, problem solving and putting it into action. My biggest takeaway from being able to be there is they were given the okay, the yes, and the resources to be able to put some of these things that we're talking about into action. What else specifically?
I don't know about specifically, but the mantra that kept coming back from the superintendent was they really live by the philosophy. Philosophy is see a problem, solve a problem. So, you know, from a very early age, and you know, this is no different than our kids here in North Manchester, you know, these kids are integrated in the community. They know the things that they would like to see fixed in the community. So they see a problem, they bring it to you, and you give them the tools and the experiences to try to solve a problem. And so, you know, you're solving problems right there, but you're also at the same time contributing to your community by helping, you know, fix something that you see is broken or needs addressed at the same time.
I don't know if anybody was here for the, and I was in the Early Learning Center with all the kids that went together to help fund that. I don't know if there's parents in Jim.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just, I mean, very much in the lines of that. So we've got the community that wants to do that type of thing. And, you know, it was interesting. He said, you know, and they have a very similar food service as what we have here too, just amazing. And somebody asked that person, why did you come to Eminence? Why did you like Eminence? You know, why did you like that school system? It's just, they never said no. Like, he always said yes every time and so now that's a challenge back, because he'll say yes, but then you can't say no back when he asks you to dive into the resort to research and because there's a lot of work that goes behind that. So very interesting. Yeah, see a problem, solve a problem.
And then they were given the building and the resources to be able to do that. Anywhere you walked in this building at Eminence, there were areas where they could communicate. As you're walking through, for example, you're walking through the halls, there's a beehive in the middle of the hall. Well, you're able to see what's going on. You're able to see the queen bee. You're able to have conversation about that. There was a live feed of Times Square, which they said they had to be careful what would actually happen on that live feed. But it's an area for them to be able to communicate, to stand around and have those times of communication with their peers. Also, the hallways were lined with different types of activities for the students to do just on the spot, to solve problems, to put together fixtures and circuits. Anywhere you looked in that building, the environment created the opportunity for problem solving and for communication. So it wasn't just the curriculum or the mindset of the teachers or the staff, but it was the physical building. It wasn't covered in white walls, but it was interactive. And that speaks to students, the environment we create for them.
Anybody else have anything? I guess what I wanted to do is because it was important because they went and they actually saw these things in action, and we were talking about the whole contribute piece and how that would fit possibly under one of the other umbrellas. And we actually got to hear about that and see that in action. And please don't think that this was a pristine school corporation, because it wasn't. It was actually, our facilities are a lot nicer than theirs. They just dressed them up internally to be able to do the things that they wanted to do, which was create those problem solvers, those collaborators and such. So going back to contribute. Go ahead.
Raju, I completely understand what you're thinking. Like that, I can see how putting contribute under solving problems could feel like a stretch. And I also understand how you saw it as that. But I also think contribute is part of collaborating. And if I'm going to collaborate effectively, then I'm going to contribute, and everybody's contributing. And I think contribute is part of communicating. Like oftentimes the reason why we can communicate is to contribute to a larger conversation. So at least in my mind, like thinking how contribute goes into multiple ones helps me a little bit. I don't know how that feels to you.
It helps you to remove it from the list, you think?
Yeah,
Because it's going to
because I
be
can see
under
how
other
it's a-
umbrellas.
Yeah, I can see how it's part of a lot of things. I would argue that it's part of being literate, contributing, but that's probably my bias there.
Which is part of being a communicator.
Yeah, so I don't know how you're feeling about that, Raju. I'd like to know.
I mean, I didn't even have contribute down, so, but I just don't think it's the same thing, that's all. That was my point.
It's a result, right? So like this problem-solving thing, the benchmarking's good, you know. So it'll be the third year at Heartland, right? We'll run a little Lean Sigma class with 10 to 12 students, and they go into these organizations, right? And they're given a problem, GPP, B. Walter, you know. And our kids, when we put these skill sets in them, it's like magic. When you watch them work with those workers and come up and do this problem solving, so that is a huge contribution. It's a contribution to the organization. It's a personal contribution to them. So regardless of these words, I'm hoping that's where we're going with this thing, is to saying what are the actionable items we're going to do to get these skill sets in these kids. And I love the fact that you guys benchmark, because that's like music to the ears on problem solving. So, like, are we kind of splitting hairs on these words, or are we?
No, we're just trying to determine what are our top 5, 6, or 7. So.
I would agree with Tommy. Like, I would be willing to cut contribute.
Is there anybody else that feels that way, or would you like to keep that word?
When we went with the 7S model, actually all three of those go together, because in order to have collaboration from the whole team, you have to communicate and everybody has to contribute. If there's one guy sitting or one person sitting over in the corner that isn't contributing, they're not collaborating and they're not communicating. And believe me, I sat through more of the classes on that than I care to count. I think the three of them have to go together, whether it's under an umbrella.
Or it's just part of the graduate profile? Tommy, did you have some?
No.
I thought you were getting ready to speak, sorry. Okay, can we live with, solve problems, collaborate, we still have to fix learner, communicate, contribute, and literate? Do we feel like those are our top 6? Does anyone want to advocate for anything else?
Yeah, I would advocate with Tommy and Dr. Lippy. That's why we send our kids here, to make sure they're literate. I just don't see that one being one.
It's kind of a, you don't see it, or you don't?
I don't think it needs to be.
You don't
part
see
of
it should be on the list?
And I'm good either way. It's just an argument, explicit versus implicit. I mean, if we decide as a group we need to be explicit and list that, I'm fine with that. To me, it was just something that was implicit in my own mind. So, I'm good with whatever the group decides when it comes to adding literate on there. It's just, a difference in perspectives, which realistically is why we're here doing this tonight, to, get all of our perspectives out here in the open.
I was a little bit surprised that persevere didn't come up a little higher. That's one that I know we talk about a lot when I talk to teachers, about students having the ability to persevere through a problem, and how that has kind of been lost a bit these days. Kids want to give up and that sort of thing. Again, I don't know if it's one of those that we're assuming comes with some of the other things that we're doing in here or not. That's the only other one that when I looked at that list, I was just a bit surprised it wasn't a little bit more prevalent. I don't know if anyone else thought that or not, but.
I like it.
Yeah, there's something to say for finishing nowadays, that's for sure. But I think if they come out as good problem solvers, then you persevere because you can solve those problems. The people that can't get by their problems
Yeah.
crash and burn, basically, so.
So we're actually teaching that through the problem-solving process.
Okay, I can live with that.
And you know, under these headings, we'll have benchmarks.
Some of these
for
others.
Perseverance under problem solving or grit
Sure.
could be one of those things. I mean, but I'm not against having perseverance because
I'm okay as long as we're including it somewhere. I do see it being under something else, and that's fine, but I just think, I was a little surprised it wasn't part of the conversation. But I agree with you that it could be under something else, and I would be fine with that.
Any other thoughts overall? I'm sorry, what? No. Anybody in our audience?
What if you change lifelong to just life learner? So it's in the moment and after learning, I guess, so to speak. I mean, I heard you say.
It's
life
always
learner,
current. Life learner.
And then it's measurable at the time. We can measure engagement, curiosity, those types of things. And I would put a plug in for literacy too. It's just.
What was your last comment, Beth?
I said I would put a plug in for literacy as well, but I'm also biased for that. I think when you did the first activity, the literate part did not come up on my radar. Because it is an assumption that we would have literate graduates. But I guess I do think it needs to be intentional that we are saying that that is our goal and probably our main goal as a school system. So I do see the importance of that, and I think that leads to all of those other items listed, I guess, or things listed.
I mean, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't put implicit goals on there. I don't think there's anything in, we're targeting that kind of rules that out. And literacy is, I know it might have, kind of started, okay, we're talking about English and math, but scientific literacy is important too. When we're talking about understanding the scientific consensus, you could solve problems, but you might not, using science, but you might not understand, okay, this is the process, this is what's considered science, peer-reviewed articles, understanding reliable sources. That's, that literacy goes beyond just, being able to read and do basic math. Yeah.
And sometimes when we look at the divide, sorry, it shouldn't get me started, but sometimes when we look at our students and somewhat the divide, literacy is what takes them to where they want to be, whether that be, whatever area, STEM, or, whether they're going on to a university or whether they're going into the workforce. I mean, literacy encompasses every area, and it brings opportunity, whether it's communication or it's written communication or you're reading. All of those pieces bring more opportunity. And if we look at families and we look at the opportunities available for them, the literacy piece is huge in that.
I'll add something I think it supports, helps me. If you trust yourdictionary.com, literate is defined in 3 ways. 1, able to read and write. 2, well-educated, having or showing extensive knowledge, learning, or culture. And then 4, knowledgeable or capable in a specified field. An example is economically literate. That's a broader, that fits for me better up on this word bubble.
As we were talking, it just literacy, a big thing for adults that are my age, you know, and I remember graduating high school and going to college, is a lack of financial literacy that was maybe not stressed when we went through school. You know, people that didn't know how to necessarily balance a checkbook, create a budget, all of those things that kind of go under the umbrella that people say on social media in terms of adulting. You know, we're all experiencing those for the first time without necessarily having been given those opportunities in our K-12 education. So I think if we're talking about literacy and we're looking to maybe establish or integrate that programming for kids as well, then, you know, that helps me a lot in terms of, you know, okay, you know, literacy is definitely needs to be one of our core goals.
She's good.
I think that all the things that we were saying are very important, and I think your discussion is very well. I think there might be something that we are overlooking or just taking for granted, and I would say this because the business that my husband is in, and he has 200 employees under him, we need to make sure that when our students leave Manchester High School, that they can walk up to someone, they can look them in the eye, they can shake their hand, they can introduce themselves, and they can have a great conversation, which I know some of that falls under communication, but some of that falls under life, real life soft skills. And I know it's not the biggest one on there, and I know that's a hard thing to maybe evaluate or measure, but I think we need some real life hands-on training so that, and my husband would tell you, it doesn't matter if it's a high school graduate or a college graduate, he's got some great students with great resumes and great grades, and they cannot look them in the eye, they cannot go through a job interview, therefore they cannot be hired. So the practical side of what we need to give our students so they're employable when they leave here, I think is something that falls under that umbrella, but maybe is not quite as important as what even I would give attention to. Public speaking is way, way undervalued, and I think that all of us have an opportunity to speak, and that's great, and we can. But if you were to ask a group of students to come in here and put a microphone in front of them and look other people in the eye and speak, there would be a lot of staring at the floor. And I think anyone that teaches currently right now could agree with that. So some true hands-on experiences with public speaking, communication skills, real life job skills, I think is critical to make our students employable at whatever level they choose to further their education. High school graduate, technical school graduate, 4-year master's, PhD, they've got to be able to do the real things that are going to get them hired.
Gwen, I appreciate that. And one of the things that I took away from Eminence was communication was one of their pillars. And in kindergarten, their students were expected to speak publicly. And it blew me away. Buddy Barry said kindergarten students spoke to audiences of up to 100 people. And so I agree with you wholeheartedly that that's a skill that we need to make sure that our graduates leave with. And he spoke highly of students that got jobs. They got the job because they could communicate clearly over other people that were much more qualified potentially, but they could communicate. So I appreciate that comment.
I agree wholeheartedly with your comment, but I put that under communication.
Yes.
Because I look for the exact same.
But I think we have to be intentional to have that articulated under that, in that umbrella. I keep calling them umbrellas, but under communication, we really need to talk about real life soft skills that our students would
We'll have to
possess.
define every one
Yeah.
of these, right? So,
I agree.
We're not going to, we're going to turn it
Well,
over to the schools.
yeah.
Well, we are still down to 6. We've been talking about it for over an hour. We have the solve problems, collaborate. We're not sure whether we want life learner, or lifelong learner. We'll come back to that. Or literate learner. But if we do that, do we want literacy on top of that? Okay.
I'm starting to, I kind of was thinking back to when I was a kid. I mean, we weren't poor, but we didn't have a lot. And you know, you guys talked about dreaming with these kids, man. My dreaming was like going in that library and getting autobiography of Roger Staubach, right? I mean, boom, I was in a Super Bowl quarterback, Rocky Bleier, some of the astronauts and stuff like that. So the more you talk about that literacy thing, the broader that gets, the more I kind of like it, to be honest with you. With finance and, I mean, there's a lot of literacies out there, I guess.
Then we also had contribute in, I said illiteracy, or literate once. So can you live with those 6? Is there anybody in here that feels differently? Okay, what are you thinking? Amy hasn't said a thing.
Yeah, that's
Here,
what
I'll give you this, Amy.
I just feel like persevere is a huge thing, because if you persevere, you're going to find your passion. You're going to reach goals that you probably didn't even dream that you would reach someday. Our initiative this year is grit, teaching kids to not give up. And even the kindergartners understand that you go back. If you try it again, you try it again. So I just feel like, I tell my own teenagers, okay, you didn't get it, go back and do it again, try it again. And literate feels weird to me. It feels like something from the 1940s when people dropped out of school when they were 15. And we would have to do some education on literate and marketing. I feel like we're stepping back. I just don't like the word. I'm sorry, Ruth.
You don't need to apologize to me, at all. But I don't like not stating that we're creating kids who can read and write and think for themselves. I mean, especially, it's not a secret that there's a push for STEM. And when you have all those things that up there read to me very much STEM and nothing about literacy, I fear that we could have kindergarten classrooms that are no longer teaching kids to read, but have a lot of great experiments happening in them. And I've seen places like that where kids are not, where we've stopped teaching some of the literacy, and so that's just my concern.
But it's the opposite. I mean, our initiatives are almost all literacy, and that is what we push all the time, which is why you have a 90-minute reading block, and you teach writing separately, and they get STEM once a week. So
it sounds like your profile of a graduate is someone who's literate.
It is. It's an obvious. It just to me seems obvious, but I can live on it, and everything else I like. So.
And I liked his broader definition of literacy. That made me think a little bit more as well. And when Tommy talked about financial literacy, and maybe we don't like the word literate, but we could say they demonstrate literacy or they exercise literacy. I think we're getting really hung up on the minutia right now, maybe. The other thing I wondered about was, we talked about contribute being absorbed in another category, and whether we bring persevere in to replace that or whether we just go with what we have.
Personally, I think contribute can be absorbed and bring persevere in.
I like perseverance too. I really do. I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm on board with that. So I certainly won't.
But to me, that goes under solving problems. We kind of went and talked about that earlier.
Can we remove lifelong and just put literate in there? Would everybody be happy with that? Literate learners? Jeremy's. Jeremy, what was yours?
Well, I don't know who it was, but, contribute, it may have been Bryce or Michael, but contribute fits under a number of those. You know, you contribute in your collaboration, in your solving problems, in your communication. So I mean, we can cross off contribute because it's going to be demonstrated in at least 3 of those other exemplars.
So moved.
Okay.
We're doing that.
So how many of you would like to remove contribute? Let's go to raising your hands.
As long as the other things are service-based. That's the,
So that really is pretty much the majority, right? There's only 3 of you that went. Okay, so contribute is gone. So we're left with solving problems, collaborate,
Communicate.
still our learner again here, whether it's life learner, communicate, and literate.
And persevere.
How many of you want to add
That's
perseverance?
the 6 persevere, yeah.
How many of you want to add perseverance?
Like it, it's like Tiger Woods.
Okay, so what do you want to do as learner? I'm going to give you 2 choices. Life learner, like that suggestion. Lifelong learner, or just learner. I guess I'll give you 3 suggestions.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
If we're talking about like what's explicit, isn't it explicit that you're a learner?
That's what I think.
And-
We're gonna be literate.
And
Just-
lifelong learner is one of those trendy education words that
Yeah.
we kick out when we want to talk smart and, oh, we're lifelong learners. You're right, we should be, we're obvious, we're in education, so I'm with Ruth on that, like, that's good.
When Mercury, you were talking about, you used the word passionate, I think a couple times when you were using it, so I don't know if that.
Passionate learner, or just passionate?
Yeah,
We're just
I
hung
like-
up on the learner
I
one,
like
really.
passionate.
I do too.
If they leave here excited about exploring.
That's a strong
learning.
word. I like it.
What word?
Passionate learner.
How are you gonna measure passion in your high school?
I have no idea how we're gonna measure that.
Maybe your teachers can help you.
But when you see it, you know they have it.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah, that
passionate.
doesn't work for us.
how are you gonna engage alumni is a better question, right? How are we gonna do that? How are we gonna make that change? That's what that word means to me, that we start looking out past the future when these kids walk out the door and we engage them and we have them come back and stuff. So you don't have a baseline, you don't have a measurement system yet. But that's just a big nugget we're missing at this school. I see it at the universities, I see it at some of the other high schools, you know? So if these things are gonna lead you guys into action, you know, I'm uncomfortable with like giving that up right now if we don't have something up there that engages alumni more, you know, that puts some systems in place. You go to do a high school reunion, where do I get a list of the people that attend my high school currently and their addresses and their phone numbers? You don't have it, you know, that's what these other entities have that we don't have here. You know, there's several alumni, well, we got a few people out here that are alumni. So to me, I'm like looking at these words and I'm saying, where are we going with this thing? They're gonna drive action from the administration. So how do we tie, I'm just looking at the end results like you guys said, okay, we're talking about words here that's gonna direct this school corporation forward. Which one of them which one focuses on alumni? So you got faculty, you got students, you got financial, and you got alumni. Those are the 4 categories I'd do a scorecard on. So how do we change this picture, you know, going forward? You don't have a baseline because we've never done it, you know, or I know, you know, Jim, you've done some things, right? You guys had a group together that we're meeting every year, right? Alumni Association. Jim's, were you a part of that? Meyer? You weren't helping Meyer out with that? Okay. It's kind of things like that. I've seen some nuggets out there. But if these words are going to drive the future actions, where are we going with that one? Because that's the one thing I see missing out of this whole thing.
I actually see that as outside of our graduate. I see that as more of a marketing and looking at ways to market and work with our alumni to help us with these pieces. Because our alumni, yeah, they're our graduates, but we're hoping at some point we're developing them to do all of the, have all these attributes. But I guess I look
So they're
at that
come back and
piece.
Contribute, basically, right?
Yeah,
So-
yes, but I look at that as more of an outreach from us and that marketing piece and putting that in place. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm thinking wrong.
Or I could be wrong, I guess, in looking at that. I'm just looking at what we're doing tonight. We're setting up strategy and we're coming up with a few words that are basically gonna be the foundation or the pillars of our, what we're doing with this school corporation. So I'm just looking at these words thinking, okay, you know, that just kind of that just leaves a void for me, but I guess, you know, I guess the way you put it, it could be outside activity, but
Yeah, it's on our list in our marketing group to actually discuss and what we're gonna do to target those individuals and get some kind of an alumni piece going. Maybe we're looking at it wrong, but we were not thinking of it in terms of this.
okay.
Is there anybody else have any thoughts on that? So, we're gonna go back one more time. It's really down to learner. What are we gonna, if you just want learner, lifelong learner, passion, is it passionate? Passionate learner, okay? So, how many of you want life learner? Nobody wants life learner. Lifelong learner.
I guess I need to know the three of the three.
Passionate was the other one.
Passionate, lifelong, or,
And just life learner.
I mean, I'm sorry, it's trendy, but I like lifelong learner. I mean, I just do, so
And then the last one was passionate
I can live with that.
learner.
I'm fine with that one too.
I'm fine with that too.
We have 4 that didn't vote. They don't, you don't care?
I'm good with the lifelong or passion.
Okay, well, we had more passionate, so passionate learner. Okay, so we're down to solve problems, collaborate, passionate learner, communicate, perseverance, and literate. That's 6. Can we live with it? Do we feel like that encompasses all that we want our kids to be when they walk out our doors?
I would just, yeah, if the literate is defined in a very, very broad way, then I'm okay with that one. Because I kind of feel the same way. To me, it's like saying they can add and subtract, like, yeah. But if you define it broader, it has more meaning.
Then why do you want solved problems?
Why do I want it?
Yeah, I mean, because that's the comparison, right? To me, that's the same comparison. Solve problems, add and subtract, critically think. But like, I'm just trying to get my head around it.
Yeah, to me, the first definition, I realize there's other definitions, but the first definition in most people's mind is you can read,
Okay.
right? So to me, that's one very important skill, but of course we're doing that. Like, it almost sounds like we weren't doing it before, or like,
So a lot of
everybody's
these,
doing that.
there's just an equation, right? This student profile thing is your Y, and then on the other side of the equal sign, you got all, it's f of x. So you got all these things, so like problem solving, you gotta be able to communicate, collaborate. Like, a lot of these things are under, you know, like subheadings or something.
And that's where we're going next.
Little
We're
equation.
almost done, believe it or not.
I guess I'm okay, I spoke against it, but I guess after listening to this gentleman's explanation and Rick's, I'm okay with leaving it in.
With the literacy, or literate, I should say, okay. All right, so here's where we're going next. We have our administrative staff over there writing our attributes that we determined were our 6. And we're going to have them pass out sticky notes. And what I'm going to ask that you do is to, under each one of them, come up with 3 ideas or 3 different tangible or visible forms of this attribute that you want to see in our schools. So, for example, if it's communication, maybe it's an oral presentation each year. That's just an example. So, to let you know after tonight, we are going to turn this information over to our schools, and we are going to have them continue this work, and they are going to identify what is under each one of these umbrellas in 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, all the way through, actually starting at kindergarten, I should say. So they are going to be looking at the research, they're going to do best practices, school visits, they're going to determine what are the needs to support this work, and what does that look like for our facilities, finance, and staff. So we are turning that over to them. They will be involving community members in that process and inviting them in as they walk through that. There will be presentations down the road, and that hopefully we're looking at December. Whether that will happen or not, it depends on if they can get through with their work in time. But they're going to come back with a board presentation and show you what they have decided that they think fits under each one of those and how they are going to get there and kind of their dream wish list on achieving that. So, and then also again in January, we will be doing additional work groups and discussing more of the challenges on what we can do to get us over that hump and get these things into action and develop a plan. So what I'm going to ask that you do is take at least 3 per each attribute, and after you are done with that, you are done for the evening. So I just appreciate you all coming out. I thank you very much. Is there anyone that wants to say anything before we allow everybody to go over and do their 3? Okay, thank you all. I appreciate it.
Do you need some?
Stickies, yeah. We can tear it down.
That's fine. That is distracting. That's fine, thank you. I am. No, that's why I said I agree. That's why I appreciate it. I agree.
Honey-do list, right? Honey-do list.
How about that?
Oh, by the way, you gotta watch out for that one.